Hi guys, and welcome to another book review. Sorry for the messiness, but I just finished this and I am about ready to finish winding things up for the day and head to bed. But I wanted to get in a book review for Rise by Mira Grant, especially while my thoughts are still so fresh. I am going to give this a 5 stars. I love this book. I have loved this series. This Rise by Mira Grant, for those of you who may not know, Mira Grant is a pen name for Seanan McGuire. So if you like the writing of Seanan McGuire, you may like the writing by Mira Grant because it is the same person. So it just, I think, might be different types of stories from what I've heard that Seanan McGuire writes now, or under Seanan McGuire. So the Newsflesh series is a collection of, well, it was supposed to be like a trilogy, 3 books, Feed, Deadline, and Blackout. There is now a 4th book out called Feedback, which I think, my understanding of reading Feedback, the synopsis of Feedback, is that it follows the same events of Feed, but just from a completely different perspective. I don't know whose perspective, but that's what it appears to be. So Rise is a collection of novellas that take place within the Newsflesh world. So the very first one in this is called Countdown. And that one would take place before the very first book. It's like 0.5 in the series. And that one we're following basically the creation of this super virus, super bug, whatever you want to call it, that starts to infect people and makes people amplify once they are dead, or spontaneously amplify, and they go from a living, breathing human being into a flesh-eating zombie. So it follows the events leading up to that. And that was really interesting. The next one is called San Diego 2014, The Last Stand of the California Browncoats. This one was interesting. This one, I believe, let me double check. Yes, so this one, I don't remember the name of the characters just because there's so many novellas in this omnibus. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, so in the second one, I would say that the rest of these completely take place. So like you can read Countdown if you get this and you want to read the Newsflesh series. You're fine definitely reading Countdown, which is the first one in here, definitely before you start the official series, before you even start reading Feed. I would say don't read anything else until after you have read all 3 of the initial trilogy. So you've read Feed, Deadline, and Blackout. And then you can pick up the rest of this, which is what I did. Well, except I didn't get possession of this until after the first or the second book. I don't remember. Anyway, and that's fine too. So, okay, so back to San Diego 2014. So this one is following a family and kind of co-workers as they go to work at a convention center. You also have, and a lot of these follow different perspectives as well. So do keep in mind this has multiple POVs in, I think, all of them actually, if I remember right. So in the set, I'm blanking on it, San Diego 2014. So they're all going to a convention center. It's kind of like a Comic-Con, is the best way to describe it. And there happens to be an outbreak of this. And so you're following people as they try to survive, and what, you know, if they have family and loved ones or friends on the outside of the convention center while it's on lockdown due to this outbreak, what's going on from the people from the outside looking in and hearing all this stuff happen, and trying to get in contact with those that they love that are stuck in there, and then vice versa. You have people that are stuck in there that want to get in touch with people on the outside to kind of say their last goodbyes because they feel like they're going to die in there. And so you're following people as they try to survive, and ultimately what happens with the government as they come in and try and gain control of this zombie outbreak. So that's that one. And then The next one is, let me see, is called How Green. Okay, so the next one is called How Green This Land, How Blue This Sea. You're following, everything else takes place from this point on especially, takes place at the events of the third book, again, which is Blackout in the Newsflash series. And this one we're following one of the team of the Masons, and this person's name is Mahir Gowda, and he lives in London. And so you're following him as he goes from London to Australia to investigate this stuff, how Australia has handled the outbreak. They handle a lot of things very differently than the rest of the world does. And to the point that it's almost kind of like a beautiful thing. One thing you do see in this, which is kind of creepy, is there's talk of zombie kangaroos. I mean, can you imagine that? This flesh-eating zombie that's a kangaroo coming towards you. But yeah, so they do have that. And so you're just following Mahir Gowda as he explores the land of Australia with these people that are a part of the same newspaper reporting team, but they just happen to live on a different continent than he did. And the Masons lived in the U.S., Mahir in London, and so there's a lot of communicating electronically, obviously. But Mahir decides to go and get a first-hand account of what it is like to be in Australia. So you're following him as he does that. And that was interesting. Now, like one of the things that was really interesting is it's like you'll have these little animals that are under the amplification threshold or the amplification weight. And so they'll be making their noises, chirping in the trees, but everything will go deathly silent when a huge amplified zombie animal enters the area. Okay, the next one is called The Day the Dead Came to Show and Tell. So as this one kind of indicates that we might hear with show and tell is that it might take you back to elementary school. For me, I think in other areas of the world it's called primary school, but in my life it was elementary school. So I'm talking like kindergarten, first grade. I don't remember doing show and tell in second grade. But this one does follow a teacher who teaches first grade. What is going on with this is you have someone that's trying to basically report and uncover what has happened to the teacher in this. And they do figure it out by the end. And it's kind of like I don't know, it's like not quite an aha moment, but something a little bit more like a realization dawning, aha moment, whatever. But it connects it to the other books, which is really cool, to that third book. So you're following, so you're not getting the perspective from the news reporter. He's telling the story from the perspective of this church and this person they are trying to investigate by the name of Elaine Oldenburg, who happens to be, like I said earlier, the teacher of the first grade class. Usually the first graders are under the amplification threshold, so they're not really a danger, but if their blood starts to flow from an injury, they can be a threat to the adults that have to teach them, because then the virus can spread over to the adult, making the adult amplify and in turn turn around and eat those around them, which in this case would happen to be kids. Do be aware of that. Some kids do get eaten in this book. And in this story, you follow Elaine, or as the reporter reports, you're following basically Elaine as she tries to save them because there's a outbreak at the school. And so you're seeing things that people thought, or that the government thought would be good safety procedures in case of an outbreak, but things fail. Life fails, technology fails. And so you're seeing that she's trying to protect those kids that she's in charge of protecting. And then she also ends up with kindergartners, having to protect them as well. So she's got first graders and kindergartners. And one thing to be aware of in this story, it's very brief, but it comes across the story of basically the question you get asked a lot, this philosophical question: are you willing to sacrifice the one to protect the many? And basically, in Elaine's life, she is forced to make that decision. She's got an injured child, and I am going to say that she makes the decision to save the rest of the children that are alive and looking to her for protection. And I'm including this here because it can be extremely disturbing to many, many people. It was unsettling to me, but I can see why it was in there. She has to, it's uncomfortable to talk about, but she has to snap the neck of this child. I don't know if the kid is a kindergartner or a first grader, but either way, this 5 or 6 year old, she's got to snap the kid's neck in order to save this other group of kids. So that was very hard to read. So there's that one, and then you're just following Elaine Oldenburg as she tries to save the kids. The next story in this one is, I love the title of this one, Please Do Not Taunt the Octopus. So this novella, you're following things from the perspective of Dr. Abby. You get more of this particular character that links in the previous novella with the books, which is very fun. So yeah, you definitely need to wait to read that one until after you finish the whole trilogy. So please do not please do not taunt the octopus follows the perspective of Dr. Abby, who is basically deemed as a weird, mad scientist. She likes to dissect things, mess with things that have this virus where they can amplify, and she lets things amplify so that they can test it to try and basically, in her mind, make the world a better place. And obviously there are people who are from a bigger organization like the CDC, who don't like what she does, and so she has to kind of take her scientific group on has to take her scientific group kind of on the run in a way. She establishes a place where they can do their work, and if they get exposed and found out where they are, then she has to kind of uplift everything, all this equipment and everyone, or uproot and relocate. So you're following Dr. Abby as someone finds out basically where she is, and you're gonna have a little mini war, and who's gonna come out surviving at the end. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, so there's only 2 more that I need to mention in here real quick. So the next novella that comes in is All the Pretty Little Horses. Now this one I would say you can also read ultimately before the official Newsflesh trilogy. I recommend waiting because it's definitely one of those things that kind of gives you a different perspective on some characters that you kind of start to really dislike, or you can start to dislike in the original series, but you kind of can end up getting a little empathy for them. It doesn't mean you're going to like them, but you kind of understand more of where they're coming from and what they did. It's still not the best situation. So this one we are following the perspective of Sean and Georgia Mason's parents and how they came to be their parents, and the events leading up to that. So, and it can be very sad. Warning for death of a child, and talk of death of children and children being abandoned by their parents. Some of the parents, are more than likely dead. And sometimes it's just like, I've already thought my child was dead and I'm done. I don't want to be responsible for another life. So that's a big trigger as well for a lot of people. So do be aware of that. But you're following, I think it's Stacy, and I can't remember the husband's name, but they're Stacy and Michael. They are the mother and father for Georgia and Sean Mason in the original series. They are very much disliked in the original series, in the trilogy. And so you're getting more of their backstory and how basically Sean and Georgia came to be. So there's that one. And then finally, I believe the last one, yes. So the last novella in this one is called We're Coming to You Live, I believe, or just Coming to You Live. This one is, all I can say about this one without giving anything away for the third book, so Blackout, is that we are following the perspective. We come in contact again with some of the Masons and some of the original newsy reporter people. And we're also back in contact with some of the scientists, with a couple different scientists, mostly Dr. Abby. But it's just interesting, and I like how it kind of wrapped everything up. There are still several possibilities with things that could happen. Things are not, it doesn't end with things being, it's all sunshine and rainbows now, and all hunky-dory. It's an end, and it's just completed nicely, and you can move on, and you can speculate with how things end up and what happens, but you don't really need to, because it's basically a satisfying ending. You don't have a big cliffhanger where you're wondering what's going to happen. It's just a satisfactory ending, but there's just so many possibilities after that ending, but you're not left like needing to know more or anything like that. So that is Rise, which is the complete News Flesh collection by Mira Grant, which is all a collection of novellas for the News Flesh series. So the only other one in this series that I have left is Feedback, which again, that I think follows the same events of Feed, just from a different perspective, but I don't know whose or anything like that. But I gave this 5 stars. I loved it, thoroughly enjoyable, and I look forward to rereading this at some point in the future. So that's going to be it. If you've read anything from this series, definitely let me know, and we can chat about that in the comments. So that's going to be it. And until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book, and I will talk to you later.